Good to see you this morning. Hope everybody's been doing well. We're going to be in Matthew 17. If you want to get out your Bibles and open up to Matthew chapter 17. Hope everybody had a good holiday. I missed you guys on Wednesday night, but I'm excited to be here this morning. I appreciate the songs and the words of encouragement that we've had today. Last week we started into study that continues today. I know that there's a chapter division here, chapter 17 beginning, but really all of this should be seen in light of what we studied last week. Notice the very beginning of chapter 17, it says, "and." That's an indicator that this isn't over. And after 6 days. Well, after 6 days from what? It's an indicator that there's something that has just happened that is important for us to understand. This is now happening after that, as a result of that. You remember last week, Jesus talked to his disciples and asked them some questions. Who did they say that I am? Oh, Elisha. Some say Elisha. Some say John the Baptist. Some say Jeremiah. But who do you say that I am? And they say, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus blesses Peter for saying that. But then Jesus turns around and he tells them, I'm going to go to Jerusalem and suffer and be put to death. And on the third day I'll be raised. This phrase, this idea is repeated 3 times as we continue forward. But this is the first time. And you can imagine how difficult that idea would be to grasp as a disciple who's never heard it before. I mean, we know Jesus came and that he died and that was the plan all along. And so to us, that's no big deal. But for someone who was a Jew at that time, looking forward to the Messiah's arrival and the Messiah doing what the Messiah was called to do from the Old Testament, the idea that the Messiah, the anointed one, the Christ, would suffer and die would be devastating. And it was so devastating that Peter took him aside and rebuked him, saying, far be it from you, this shall never happen to you. No way, Jesus. You're the Lord's anointed. That means God's going to take care of you. But Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. You're a hindrance to me. And he goes on and he tells his disciples, if you want to come after me, you have to deny yourself and follow me. You have to lose your life to find it in me. That's hard words coming out of the mouth of Jesus, saying, what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what will a man give in return for his soul? You are now given this opportunity to find life for your soul. You have to lose your life to find it, though. How hard would that be to accept? But then these words come out of Jesus' mouth. In verse 27 of chapter 16, for the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father. Will it be worth it? The Son of Man is going to die. He's going to suffer, and he's going to be raised on the third day. But then he will come back with his angels in the glory of his Father. You see how these words are trying to give them hope and encouragement, but you imagine how difficult that would still be as your disciple. Chapter 17 shows us that that wasn't all that Jesus gives them. To help them cope with this idea, you have to deny yourself. You have to take up your cross. You have to follow me. You have to lose your life in order to find it, in order to receive your life, in order to receive the glory and the promise of the blessing of the kingdom. In order for them to see that, this is what he tells them. Verse 1 says, and after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John his brother and led them up on a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. And Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He was still speaking when, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. And when the disciples heard this, they fell on their faces and were terrified. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, Rise and have no fear. And when they lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus only. I have to pause here and consider what's happening right here. Jesus decides to take 3 of his disciples, doesn't even take all of them, and he's going to bring them up on this high mountain. So you imagine this, after 6 days of mulling over what Jesus has said, I'm going to suffer and die and then be raised, and you have to do the same. 6 days of thinking about that. Jesus now comes to you out of nowhere and says, hey, you're coming with me. Come on, we're going up the mountain. Okay, you go up the mountain. And as you get up on the mountain, all of a sudden, Jesus is changed. And the way this is described is that his face is shining like the sun, and his body is shining in such a way that his clothes appear white as light. He's radiant. He's glorious. Just imagine the splendor. All of a sudden, this man who you've been with for over a year now has become something else in front of you. What might you think? But then something else happens. Moses and Elijah appear right before him. Now, this whole time we've been studying Matthew, nothing like this has happened. Nothing, this is out of the ordinary. This is so odd. Jesus has completely changed, and now Moses and Elijah are right there before 3 of the disciples. And you see Peter being excited. Lord, it's good that we're here. But then he says something really weird. What are you going to say in that situation? Jesus is completely different now. He's this glorious being where the radiance of his glory is shining even through his clothes. There's Moses. There's Elijah, these pillars of the Jewish faith standing before him. What are you going to say? Well, Peter. He's got to say something, right? It's just Peter. This is what he does. Lord, it's good that we're here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here. One for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. I don't really know why Peter said this. I don't really know what his intentions were. Maybe it's getting late and they need to set up camp, and he's thinking, oh, we came up here to pick up Moses and Elijah. Imagine what this would do for their cause. Imagine. Oh, God's sending in the reinforcements. Here's Moses, here's Elijah. Surely the chief priests and the elders and everybody will come now, and they'll listen and they'll follow us, and now surely we will have success. We've got Moses and Elijah on our side. Let's build them some tents. I'm your servant. I'm your guy. I'm here to help. Let's build some tents, and we'll go ahead and camp out here, and then we can all go down together the next day. Maybe that's what Peter was thinking. But as he's speaking, there's a cloud coming down, and out of the cloud comes these words. This is my beloved Son, with whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him. Well, this voice, however it was spoken, terrifies the men. They fall on their faces to the ground. Why would God say this in response to Peter's question? Should we build 3 tents here? Think about that for a second. What's going on in this text? What's happening here? What is God trying to say? And what statement is he trying to make here? Well, obviously, the point is that Peter is missing the point. Peter is not understanding as he sees Moses and Elijah in front of Jesus, and Jesus radiant and shining. He's not understanding that Jesus is not like them. He is different. This is my beloved Son with whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him, not listen to all three of these guys, not these three guys are going to go with you and all together they will be able to accomplish my purpose. No, this is my beloved Son with whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him. A statement here that Moses and Elijah are not equal to Christ. Maybe they would have thought that in the past, as Moses had predicted, a prophet like me will rise up. But no, Jesus is something else. And I love how he comes to their aid and he helps them to rise up and he encourages them, telling them, rise and have no fear. You see him calming them and helping them. And he works with them to try to help them understand a little bit about what's going on. But what he says here is, they lifted up their eyes and everybody's gone. You know, if you were Peter at that point, maybe you're thinking, what did I do wrong? You know, how did I mess this up? But everybody's gone, and Moses and Elijah are not sticking around. And so Jesus helps them up, but nobody else is there, and they're probably just left wondering what's going to happen. Verse 9, it says, as they were coming down the mountain, instead of staying there in tents, they're coming down the mountain. And as they were coming down the mountain, Jesus commanded them, tell no one the vision until the Son of Man is raised from the dead. Oh, don't you know that hurt? To hear those words come out of Jesus' mouth. Now, we've heard those words come out of Jesus' mouth when someone's healed, and we're just like, dude, keep it quiet. He said keep it quiet. It's not impossible. You can do this. But this, you just saw Moses and Elijah. Who else around you, who else, even among the disciples, can say, hey, have you spoken to Moses and Elijah lately? Have you seen them? Because we just did. We were up on the mountain. You know, no big deal. You know, who would want to keep that inside? That would be such a big deal. So why would Jesus tell them, don't tell anybody about this? Well, we've seen before that Jesus doesn't want word to get out about him being the Messiah and the Christ. He said that back in verse 20. Don't tell anybody that I'm the Christ, because they don't understand what it means to be the Christ. They don't understand the mission that Jesus has come here to do. And so they can't comprehend, and they might try to lift him up to be a king that he's not. And instead, he wants this to be kept on the down low until after Jesus is raised up from the dead. You can tell people, you just have to wait for me to be resurrected. Interesting. Then it goes on. It says, the disciples asked him, then why did the scribes say that Elijah must come? Elijah must come. He answered, Elijah does come, and he will restore all things. But I tell you that Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but did to him whatever they pleased. So also the Son of Man will certainly suffer at their hands. Then the disciples understood that he was speaking to them of John the Baptist. Isn't this interesting, this conversation that he has with them? First of all, he says, tell no one of what you saw, whenever you know that's what they're thinking about, is how nobody's going to believe this. Andrew's not going to believe what he just missed out on. That's all they're thinking about. He says, don't tell anybody, and they respond, why did the scribes say that Elijah must come first? You see, in the Old Testament, there's this prophecy about Elijah coming before the day of the Lord, before the Lord comes, in the book of Malachi. And so they're wondering why the scribes had said this, and now we've seen Elijah here on the mountain. He's obviously come, but he's not coming with us. And now we can't tell anybody about him having come. So how does this line up with Scripture, Lord? How is it that Elijah was supposed to be coming first and he's not really coming with us? What's going on? You go back to Malachi, and the very last verses of the Old Testament. This is the hope that the Jews would have had looking forward to the Messiah. In verse 5 of Matthew 4, it says, "Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. And he will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the land with a decree of utter destruction." Do you see the importance of Elijah coming first? He must come. He must turn the hearts of the fathers to the children to the fathers, so that the destruction won't come. So here's Elijah. Why isn't he coming? Why isn't he coming with us? He's got to do this. And Jesus reveals to them what we've already known, because Matthew has hinted to it in the past, that John the Baptist was Elijah. Was the Elijah to come? As we look throughout Matthew, as we've been studying this, we've seen Elijah, John the Baptist is dressed like Elijah. He's a man wearing camel hair. He's eating locusts and wild honey and living in the wilderness. And we've been studying Elijah too on Wednesday night. So this all works out perfectly to understand that John the Baptist had the same kind of spirit and the same kind of power as Elijah. And he was there teaching and preaching and helping the people understand the kingdom of heaven is at hand. You must repent and you must submit to baptism and be washed. And they didn't accept him. They refused to listen to it. The scribes, the elders, the chief priests. And Jesus points out, they did to him whatever they pleased. Now, earlier we heard that Herod had killed John the Baptist, but this seems to hint that the Pharisees and scribes had maybe sold him out and caused all of this. They did to him whatever they pleased. And he says, so also the Son of Man will certainly suffer at their hands. You see how this is connected to what he said before. I've got to suffer and I've got to die and be raised on the third day. All of this idea is supposed to collide with everything he said before and build on it to encourage the disciples. And you wonder, what is this transfiguration about, right? This is the story of the transfiguration. Why is the transfiguration here? And what is in this story? What is this all pointing to? Well, now we can probably understand it a little bit better. And knowing the immediate context around it, Jesus was transfigured before his disciples because they were struggling to really accept what the Christ was teaching them, that he must suffer and die. They couldn't understand, they couldn't grasp that idea. And so now Jesus takes 3 of his disciples up on a mountain to reveal to them that yes, he is the Son of God, and they need to listen to him. Right? The words from God himself. Now, you remember, Jesus asked the question, who do they say that I am? Well, John the Baptist, Elijah, Jeremiah. Who do you say that I am? The Christ, the Son of the living God. Who does God say that I am? God says, I am the beloved Son, and you must listen to me. Notice how Jesus is revealing that to his disciples, that God says exactly what you say, and he backs up everything that I say. What I say is truth, and you will not be rebuking me or telling me otherwise. I must suffer. And how later on, this clearly points out, Elijah suffered and I also will suffer. This is part of it. But notice there's a lot more here in this text than what's on the surface, right? That's the surface context, the surface idea that's in this. But if you read this and you know the Old Testament, you know there is more being told than meets the eye. Like, why is Jesus shining? What is that all about? Well, if you know your Old Testament, then you remember when Moses went into the tabernacle and was face to face with God, and the glory of God was shining on his face. He came out. It was reflected glory, but it was staying for some period of time, and everybody was scared of him because he had been in the presence of God and he had to wear a veil over his face. Well, notice how different this is. This is not just his face because of the reflection. This is coming out of him. The radiance of the glory of Christ is shining forth from his body, showing that he has not just been in the presence and now has the reflection, but it is actually inside of him and it's bursting out of him. but God keeps it concealed. And God just gives them a little glimmer, a little understanding that this is truly God. In Ezekiel, we read images about God himself on his throne. And his image is a gleaming metal that's full of fire and like shining brightly. It's almost like a picture of the sun in human form, that this is what God looks like. And now what you see in Jesus is that he resembles that. He's similar to that kind of picture of the glory of God radiating from his body. And you remember in the Old Testament, this picture of God's glory coming to fill the temple and to dwell with his people. Remember over and over again that the tabernacle was set up in Exodus chapter 40, and the glory of the Lord filled the temple, right? The glory of the Lord stayed with his people, and that was an indication that God was with them. Same thing happened in Solomon's temple. The glory of the Lord filled the temple. And it had this cloud that was hiding the radiance of the glory of God to keep people from dying. But the glory of the Lord was inside the temple. Wasn't that interesting? That you see the body of Jesus and the glory radiating out of his body. And not only that, it's interesting because after the destruction of the temple, another temple was built and there was no glory. But God said his glory would return and fill the temple. And guess what? He did. And it's showing, it's being hinted at, it's being, a little preview is being given to the disciples so that they see, they know, they understand. This is the glory of the Lord, filling Jesus' body and dwelling among men. Wow. And as we see also in Exodus, Moses going up on a high mountain. And also in 1 Kings, Elijah going up on a high mountain. And the questions they ask and the things that they're seeking is essentially, Lord, show me your glory. Show me your glory. Let me see who you really are. God reveals himself to them. In Exodus 34, he gives a full-on description of who he is. I've been saying that over and over again because it's the single most repeated reference in the Old Testament, and it's important to grasp what the Lord says about himself. He says, the Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, but who will by no means clear the guilty. The picture of God as being gracious and merciful and compassionate, is that not easily seen in who Jesus is? So here's Moses and Elijah. Remember Elijah? You remember how Elijah came up on the mountain and he's distressed because he doesn't understand why the people haven't responded the way he thought they would. And he goes up there seeking the Lord, and God reveals himself. But it wasn't in the strong wind. It wasn't in the earthquake. It wasn't in the fire. It was in this still small voice. And he reveals to Elijah the same thing. He says, I have thousands that I'm showing steadfast love to. But I will by no means clear the guilty. I've got plans for the guilty. Same kind of picture, same kind of illustration given of God's character and God's nature. And it's important for us to understand that Jesus is God's nature exemplified in human form. There's no better statement of who God is and what God has done and what the nature, what the character of God is than looking at the body and the life of Jesus. And Moses and Elijah meet Jesus on the mountain and get to see it for themselves. And then you've got the statement from God coming out of the mountain, coming out of the cloud that's on the mountain. And hopefully you remember, if you've been doing our reading, you probably remember this, and hopefully if not, you still remember when God spoke the 10 Commandments to the people. They gathered around the mountain, and the mountain was burning with fire, Mount Sinai, and smoke, And out of the mountain came the voice of God, giving them the 10 Commandments, and they fell on their faces in fear. And they asked Moses to go up there and told him, don't let God speak to us again. What's happening here in this scene as the disciples fall on their faces and God speaks to them is very similar to that, but God doesn't give them the 10 Commandments. He says, listen to Him. Listen to Him. This is how you have a covenant relationship with me. You listen to Him. You know, throughout the entire Bible, we've been seeing God working to reveal Himself to mankind. He's been trying to make His character, His qualities known, and trying to help them understand through prophets, through kings, through priests. But now, finally, He sent this message that cannot be overlooked or ignored. It's a message that's loud and clear so that we can all see it if we'll just pay close attention to it. And this is revealing to us in this transfiguration scene who Jesus really is, and letting these 3 men know Jesus is God. Now you just imagine having that knowledge as you go through the rest of Jesus' life. Having that understanding, how that would change your perception of everything that's happening all around you. He wanted just a few to see all that He was doing and all the suffering that He was going through before He is finally glorified and raised up from the dead. Imagine the difference this would make in the lives of Peter and James and John as they do see the Lord suffer to the point of death, and then they do see Him raised, and then they do see Him come back, and they see the glory of His new body, and they see the hope of future glory and the future return of Christ. Imagine how this event would impact them. Well, we actually don't have to imagine, because they tell us how it's impacted them. John and Peter do. In John chapter 1, what we read about Jesus in John chapter 1 is essentially based on what happened here on this mountain. That He has, the Word has become flesh and dwelt among us, chapter 1, verse 14, and we have seen His glory. Glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. He just points out throughout all of this, if you read all 14 verses there at the beginning, that Jesus is the Word of God, that He is the light of God shining in the darkness. He is the glory of God. And Peter also mentions it in 2 Peter chapter 1. And I would like to read this, verses 16 through 19. And notice what Peter says about this event. He says, "We did not follow cleverly devised myths when we made known to you the power and coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, but we were eyewitnesses of His majesty. For when He received honor and glory from God the Father, and the voice was borne to Him by the majestic glory, 'This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased,' we ourselves heard this very voice borne from heaven, for we were with Him on the holy mountain. And we have the prophetic word more fully confirmed, to which you will do well to pay attention, as to a lamp shining in a dark place, until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your hearts." Notice how Peter recalls the event on that mountain, and he says the prophetic word is confirmed. And you would do well to pay attention to what the Lord says, what the Son of God says. He is the beloved Son, and what He says is true. Do you think Peter got it? He understood exactly what's going on and what happened on that day after it was all said and done. Now, we know Peter struggled through the rest of Jesus' life. He didn't fully grasp it till later, but he got it. And so what does this say to us? How does this help us? Do we see the majesty? We just sang the song before the sermon, "My eyes have seen your glory." Have you seen it? Have you seen the glory of who Jesus is? He is God in human form. Ken sang a number of songs. He came to earth. He became a baby and needed care. This is God humbling himself and allowing himself to be mistreated. And he's suffering. The whole life existence would be suffering. And the disciples are worried about the cross, but all of it was suffering. That was just the climax of it. But suffering is okay with him because he knows there's glory up ahead. And he has his eyes fixed on that future glory. And so he's able to deal with the ignorance of his disciples and their, ambition and desires to have a kingdom on earth. He's able to deal with all that because he knows it's okay to suffer. There is a future hope of glory waiting for us after this life is over. The disciples eventually grasped that. We have to grasp that as well. Also in 2 Peter, I guess leading up to what he's talking about there in the Transfiguration, he talks about the fact that we are partakers of this divine nature. That God has sent to us Christ so that we could see and understand God more fully and then become more like him. And he commands us to add to our faith virtue, to virtue knowledge, to knowledge self-control, to self-control steadfastness, to steadfastness godliness, to godliness brotherly affection, and to brotherly affection loves. He tells us to keep adding things to our faith, to keep growing and becoming closer to the image that we have found in Jesus Christ. Because God revealed the glory of Christ in the Transfiguration. And it's beautiful. And it's worth it. It's worth it. I would hate for anybody here to miss out on that. I sure would hate to miss out on that myself. That glory is eternal. And it's worthy of losing our life to obtain. I know that we, like the disciples, struggle with that idea of actually taking up a cross every day, of allowing others to mistreat us and abuse us, of going through suffering in this life. It just doesn't sound pretty. It doesn't sound good. It's something we want to avoid. But it's worth it. It's worth it. If you're here this morning and you've not submitted yourself to Christ and there's something that we can do to encourage you or help you in any way, will you let us know? Maybe you've called Jesus your Lord, but you're not fully committed and you need our prayers to overcome the struggles in this life. I hope this helps you to see the glory is worth it and it's coming. And I hope this encourages those of us who are struggling to keep pressing on and keep fighting the good fight. If there's any need, please come forward as we stand and as we sing.